So I turned this thing on and we're in pre-chill for about a minute and 17 seconds. None of my temperatures have changed. My T3, T4 are basically exactly the same. My evaporator plate's not getting cold. So came up here to the roof. So I've only got one IB or quiet cube unit downstairs. I don't know if this is the condenser. It's a hunk of junk all taken apart, left apart, or it's this hunk of junk all taken apart, left apart, or is it this hunk of junk over here? I'm gonna guess that it's this one just because I looked at the date and on my tag it says manufactured 21, so this is the newest unit. I noticed that this disconnect is flipped off. Curious if I just flip the power switch on, if it fires up. And look at that. That's freaking exciting. All right, now let's just go downstairs and see if it starts working, I guess. All right, so just wanted to look at this real quick before I went downstairs. Notice that we have this aftermarket fan cycle switch installed. Obviously, this is my bad switch. Someone just clipped the wires right off the top of there and then wired them in to this aftermarket, screwed it right onto the end of that Schrader. But I would probably bet that that's leaking a little bit, as well as that cap needs to be covered. Also notice that someone swapped out the contactor, left the broken contactor or malfunctioning contactor down here on the bottom. So that's just what I'm seeing initially. I'm gonna go and see if I have any cooling going on. There's another cap missing, needs to be put in place. Let's see if I'm getting any heat. Yeah, that's warm. It's not hot. It's not. Let's see what my suction line feels like. Oh, that's cold. That's cold. That's a benefit. Okay, let's go downstairs and see if we're making any ice. All right, so went back downstairs. I reset my machine. 9 minutes into freeze, my suction pressure, my suction temperatures only at 43, 46. My suction pressure is close to 110, and I'm not too mad at that, but I feel like that's in range. That is an issue. For some reason, my suction pressure is not pulling down. This is my liquid line coming down, and then this is my suction line. This is cold. It's not that cold. It's kind of, got a condensation buildup on it. I don't know yet if I have a leaking harvest valve, a TXV issue. For some reason, I'm thinking compressor. I shouldn't jump to that conclusion, but I also had this off earlier. Here, I'll do this for you. Got zero ice formation on the entire evaporator. I feel like if it was a TXV issue, since there's two TXVs, there's one down there and there's one up there. If it was a TXV issue, I feel like one of them would be bad and not the other one. So I would get some ice, but I'm getting zero ice. If it was a harvest valve issue, I feel like this would be warmer than it is. I don't know. All right, so here's my plan. I just turned it off, and I assume that I'm still running upstairs. The condenser upstairs will shut off based off a low pressure switch. That might have been the reason why they shut off the disconnect, because it was just constantly running. This hasn't gone down to shut it off, and this is up higher. This is exactly the same, and this is exactly the same. I'm gonna run upstairs real quick, see what's going on with my compressor. So just as I suspected, compressor's still running. I believe that is my low pressure switch. Let's see, what does it say on there? Something PSI 20 to 50. So assuming my liquid line solenoid is closed downstairs, this should have pumped down, and this would have cut power to my contactor, shutting off my compressor. My pressure downstairs still says it's at like 100 or 110. So I'm gonna assume that this compressor is insufficient, doesn't have enough strength, or something is wrong inside of it to where it's not able to pump down. I'm gonna go downstairs and I'm gonna show you how I can verify that that compressor is bad. Okay, so back downstairs. These haven't changed. My compressor's still running. I took the cap off my suction line king valve, which is this guy right here. Now I'm gonna use this wrench and I'm gonna try to close that valve and see if I can get the machine to shut off, or the compressor to shut off. Okay. It's not changing, it's not changing. That's the same, that's still cold. All right, so this is fun. We got my gauge up here. We're reading the same suction pressure that we're reading downstairs. My compressor is smoking hot. I can't even touch it for all that long. It actually just shut off, but it didn't shut off on low pressure control. I don't know if you can see it, but my contactor is still pulled in, still passing power. My fan's still running. My pressure is still high. That compressor should be running, but it went off on overload, on internal overload probably. There's like a little disc on the bottom that cuts power when it gets too hot. So that's why that's not running. I am going to diagnose this as a bad compressor. There's no other reason for this to not be pulling down, especially since I closed my service valve downstairs, my suction king valve, I closed that thing. So there's nowhere for the refrigerant to go but downstairs into the receiver. But it's still high pressure. So we're gonna say bad compressor. Hey, just close down the king valve or the service valve for the suction side. If the compressor doesn't pull down at least, then it's bad compressor. If the compressor pulls down past the 20 psi cutout, but it continues to run, you check your low pressure control. If your low pressure control is still closed instead of open, which cuts power to the contactor and then the compressor, then you know you have a bad low pressure control. In this case, it's very possible that the low pressure control caused the compressor to malfunction. Either way, we're gonna replace the compressor and then replace the low pressure control while we're in there. And then also that janky aftermarket fan cycle switch, get rid of that as well. Put the OEM part in and then call it a day. Also verify the right charge, because it's a good possibility somebody was messing with it that shouldn't have been messing with it. So hopefully you learned something. I'll see you guys next time.